Welcome to the topic of backup and disaster recovery. The potential emergency as an architecture accelerator. Who here is running applications somewhere in charge of things not going wrong? Okay. Who here is developing applications? Okay. Who here doesn't do anything with applications? Okay, maybe I'll change your mind. So what am I trying to tell you? I'm trying to tell you how to take something you need to do and use it as a motivation for something you maybe would like to do. So what's the problem? Okay, this is a problem I didn't anticipate. Okay, third time's the charm. We all face the problem of legacy. Legacy in the sense of you have built something in the past, and this can be, like 10, 20 years ago, 5 years ago. It's all legacy. And I'll just give you one specific example of what's happening. Everybody starts from manual setup. Everybody in the world, nobody doesn't start from manual setup. Whenever you start something new, you do it manually. Why? It's easier. And we don't have time for automation, and automate is my thing, but everybody starts manual. I also start manual. Whenever I do something new, I do it manually, because then I see what I'm doing and I have more control over it. And I'm doing it once, so why should I automate? And then you do updates, manually, of course. And you do more updates, manually. Eventually, you decide to switch to automation. In the case of infrastructure, most likely that's Terraform nowadays, but fill in whatever other fancy buzzword technology you prefer. And then you keep applying and updating and updating. I would call this architecture rot, because what happens actually is you're building more and more and more on the legacy of yesterday and the days before. And obviously, eventually, as it needs to happen, something goes wrong. An outage, a ransomware attack, it blows up, whatever. The question isn't, does it go wrong? The question is, when will it go wrong? And if there's only one thing you walk away today, it is the assumption eventually things go wrong. And if you run a lot of things or a very large environment, it's just more likely to go wrong sooner. So what do you do now? Well, that's the only thing you have, right? But the problem is, it's most likely not going to work. With all the fingers crossed, it's still not going to work. Why? Because you never tried running your Terraform apply after something horribly went wrong before. And I believe that is one of the fundamental problems that we as IT people need to actually solve. So a quick overview of today. We'll quickly step through the basics of backup and disaster recovery. I would like to a little bit go deeper into what I call the restore time objective challenge. Obviously, we talk about automation, and then we come to the main question, which is how can we use all of that as an architecture accelerator, meaning getting better. And in the end, of course, it's also a recipe for solving disaster recovery problems. So, business continuity, and everybody needs to know about that. It's a comprehensive strategy, blah, 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 blah. Bottom line, staying in business, no matter what. Whatever definition people give you, it's about staying in business. And us IT people, technologists, are at the core of staying in business when things go wrong. So what's a typical timeline of an outage and the recovery? Well, we're good people, so we have a backup, right? I'm assuming everybody has a backup somewhere. We take another backup, obviously, like you do them, take them from time to time. So here's the next backup, then there's the next backup, but oops, exactly then it goes wrong. Trust me, Murphy's Law, whatever goes wrong will go wrong at the worst possible moment. And that is exactly in the middle of a backup. So now you enter so-called headless chicken mode. Eventually you manage some part of a partial recovery based on one of your backups. You continue with a little bit less headless chicken mode and eventually have a mostly recovered system and keep working. And if you do that well enough, your company stays in business, and if not, then, well, IT people always find a new job. I'm just being honest here. So, important things to remember. This is the recovery point objective. It is how far do we travel back into the past in order to recover our data here. And please keep in mind, the last backup will be broken. You always go back one backup before that. And then we have the recovery time objective, which is how long does it take us to actually go back into business? And since I personally have a hard time remembering RTO and RPO, for me it's like that's what I have in my pocket, the RPO, and the RTO is what can I do with the stuff I have in my pocket in order to recover. So this is everything you need to know about backup and restore and disaster recovery to talk like a pro. So, very important, backup is not disaster recovery. When we talk about backup, we typically think about restore. So restore a single file, database, item, mailbox, whatever. Restore a single thing. Disaster recovery, on the other hand, is restore everything, all the files, all the databases, all the mailboxes, all the storage, all the servers. And the fundamental difference is the following. Restoring happens when we have the environment. Restore a single file onto the file server. Restore a single mailbox onto the mail server, and so on. Disaster recovery happens when we don't have it. So, you need to restore all the files, but the file server is gone. Oops. You need to restore your data center, but the data center is gone. That's the disaster recovery problem. And the biggest disaster recovery problem is we don't have time. Because getting a new data center takes like forever. So that's why backup, restore, and disaster recovery are really fundamentally different things. I would suggest a few guiding principles. Number one, backup is only the means for restoring. Think about the problem from the restore end of the story. I would like to restore XYZ. In order to do that, I need to have a backup looking so and so. It will help you to get to a good backup strategy. The second guiding principle is backup and restore automation enable disaster recovery and business continuity. Automation is key here, because when it happens, you don't have time to do it all manually. And finally, please use the same backup for restore and disaster recovery. Why would I take backup twice for nearly the same thing? So better one backup serving all purposes. So what is the restore time objective problem? It's that time is not there when we need it. Just a quick example. I'm sure you all have heard about storage air networks, which is like the big storage in data centers. And here's a small but typical example. 140 byte terabyte SAN storage, modern tape libraries. They have a super high throughput, but a full restore still takes a week. Oops. It's a problem, because will your company survive that week? Or will it be bankrupt? What happens with the external relationships between your company, your application, your whatever, that takes a week to recover, and the outside world? Will you still have customers after that week? And what if your physical layer was actually affected? And it's not just, okay, let's reset, wipe everything, restore the data, and keep on living happily. What if you actually have to go and buy stuff and ship it and install it? And obviously, how would we test that? How can we know it actually works? Do we have a second data center standing around waiting for us to play with? I don't. So the quality, the assurances, we know it will work is a real problem here. And what I would like to propose is we need to think differently. Today, our systems, they got way too big to continue in this old world, backup, restore, it's gonna be okay, I have it here on my USB thumb drive, whatever, you can do at home. In the world of professional IT, we need to think differently. So if we look at a service level agreement for backup, restore, and disaster recovery, at the moment we have like RPO, RTO, and a lot of prayer, hope, and good intentions, which is an uncertainty, and I believe we can optimize it. And the way how I would like to optimize it is, let's get rid of the restore time. And let's exercise restoring each and every time we do it. Why? Then we know it works. So we restore every backup immediately. We have a replacement system that is restored and ready to use, and it just works. And instead of trying to restore when we need it, which can not work, we switch over to a working recovery system that has been verified and that we know it works. And that actually gives us a fixed RTO. And that's the secret of what I call the no restore solution. It's a very simple idea. Let's get rid of the restore in the time of the disaster. The way how we do that is we, of course, take our backups, but then we automatically restore that backup into a recovery system, check that it works, and park the recovery system on the side in case we need it. So again, same story as before, it blows up, but then we just switch over to the recovery system. And that's it, we are done. Disaster recovery happened. In a fixed time, we can predict it, we've exercised it 50 million times because we did it for every backup. So, that's so far so nice and easy. In reality, however, this one system here is only a small part of our world. If you think about the world being our entire data center, cloud accounts, application, whatever you're working with. So what would be if we would think with the same ideas and the same principles about the whole world of our environment and say, okay, we take backups of the world, we automatically restore that into a spare world, so to say, check that it works. And then we have a recovery world, and disaster recovery is just activating something that is proven to work. So, automate a complete production environment. Who's done that so far? Oh, nice, very nice. You all will get there. Imagine, and I remember seeing a movie like that. Imagine we have automation that can build our entire IT world from scratch. Wouldn't that be nice? And I can tell you this is achievable. It sounds hard, but it's actually achievable. And it's worth doing. So if we would have such a full automation to create a production environment, my disaster recovery plan would look like this. It blows up. Yeah, I can't prevent that. But then I can use my automation. It will probably run like, 12 hours. It's not instant. And my task is leaning back and watching. And that's how I envision disaster recovery to actually work in a reliable fashion. Because under pressure, I'm for sure the weakest element in the chain. I will make mistakes. So if I automate the process, there will be less mistakes. Now, how do we get there? Obviously, automate everything. So we need to start from defining things. Like the Bible starts, in the beginning, there was the world, the word. We define things, right? So we start from the definition of the world, configuration. We name things, databases, host names, whatever you need to name in your world, and you write that down into some configuration files. Then you create a new, let's say, cloud account. If you're in the data center, it's a bit harder, but still possible. If you're in the cloud, this is, of course, super simple because that's what the cloud excels at. Horizontal, infinite scale. So let's just get another one. And then you install your infrastructure components, servers, databases, networks, storage, whatever you need to have. Then you install your applications, nowadays typically in Kubernetes, but doesn't have to be. You restore all the data, obviously. Yeah? Application without data isn't interesting. And please do test it. So I'm sure you have some smoke tests. I hope you can automate them. If not, then it's worth investing into, and then you just take it live and you're done. Step by step. And if you all think never gonna happen, I can tell you at my last job, I did exactly that with a nice team of system engineers, and it took us exactly 2 weeks to go from scratch to a working application environment in a closed, from scratch built environment. So it is possible. Of course, it wasn't perfect. It took another couple of months to bring it into completion, that it covered enough of the entire application to be useful. But the first 2 weeks was enough to really set up all this as a framework that shows it is possible. So we call that on-demand environments. And the idea is totally simple, because as a developer, I want to have an on-demand environment of the entire world that I can actually play with. So building on-demand environments will make your developers super, super happy. And will really speed up the development, because suddenly people can actually innovate in a risk-free environment where they don't have to worry about harming other developers or production. So that step alone is already extremely valuable to your company, because it enables developers, it will drive innovation, it will speed up everything. And, fun fact, you happen to fix your architecture in order to accomplish that. With a crappy architecture, this is really hard. So while building a new world from scratch, fully automated, you will just automatically fix your architecture. And it is painless to fix the architecture because you are in a green field. And by the way, the most important rule we had when building this is we delete everything all the time and then build it again automatically via scripting and validate that it still works. No manual messing around beyond figuring out how to write the Terraform and Helm chart or data manipulation script. Just delete stuff more often and you will get quickly into automating stuff. Be bold, delete. That's why it's an on-demand environment where it's safe to delete everything. And after a week, we delete it automatically because we want developers to always work on a clean environment and not on something they manually kept alive for 5 years and that maybe has a small resemblance with production. So then, of course, you can have a lot of them. And one per team, one per engineer, one per department, one per... We need to demo something to a customer with some special setup. We have an integration project with another partner and we need to hack up some API to play with. Perfect use case for on-demand environments. And then please take them to the next stage, let's say staging, QA, whatever, and please also into production. The goal of this entire exercise is to automate everything in a way that it is production ready. So you take it from development over staging into production and you have a fully automated production environment. And that is really valuable. Because first of all, my job got easier. Lean back. And second, if it blows up somewhere, it's not really such a tragic thing because I can just use my automation to create a new one. And why do I know that works? Well, because we had been trying it out all the time before. So I live in a world of proven automation that does its job. I can trust it. And that is actually disaster recovery automation. And in my ideal world, all that needs to happen is in the morning I send out an email with, hey guys, there was an outage, we fixed it, took a bit to restore the data, please go check your applications for inconsistencies because we had been offline for a while and we had to restore an older version of our entire world. That's how I would like to survive the next disaster. So, some personal materials that go into that. If you ever think about Linux and disaster recovery, please use the standard open source application for that called Relax and Recover. I started writing that nearly 20 years ago. It's still the only really working thing, part of all Linux distributions. And if you have a question, talk to me. The idea of no restore solution is also not from yesterday. And it led to another piece of open source that I wrote a long time ago. Luckily, nobody's using that anymore. But all the big vendors turned that into a big and expensive product, which is essentially the same idea. Keep ready clones of virtual machines that you can activate when you need. SaaS applications are important. So if you think about disaster recovery and SaaS applications, you will be shocked to find out that this is actually not a feature. No SaaS application helps you with disaster recovery. They also don't do backups for you, by the way. They just assume nothing goes wrong. So I did a deep dive for Google Workspace. I know all the other SaaS applications aren't better. If you want to know more, look into that article. There's also a solution, how you can actually back up and what you cannot back up. In general, think about test-driven development in infrastructure, not only in software development. And back in the days when DevOps was still new and a thing, we walked around and said, okay, we do test-driven development in infrastructure engineering, and we call that DevOps risk mitigation, because that's how we make sure that when we give more privileges to people, actually we don't add more risks for the company. Via automation and testing and test frameworks, and trust the code, don't trust me, trust my code, because there's a test for that. Recently, I published a GitHub backup app, so if you don't have a backup for your GitHub stuff, you might want to look at that. And finally, there is a much longer talk that doesn't talk only about the no-restore solution, but also about the risks and benefits and side effects of backup and disaster recovery in the modern age. There's a video. It was at the DevOps Con here in Berlin half a year ago. So, to summarize, the potential emergency is the architecture accelerator for your organization. Instead of pushing it away, saying, hey, disaster recovery, oh, we don't know what to do, take it as a challenge and go back and say, yeah, we would like to solve that. And here's the idea. We build on-demand environments that encompass everything, that cover all our environments, and use that as a building block. We will fix our architecture in order to automate, and it will make our developers super happy. And then you roll that out to development, staging, and production. You have proven, reliable, and fast disaster recovery. And extra perk, you can now easily change major parts of your architecture, because suddenly you have a qualified testing environment where you can make even bold and crazy changes and see if it works, which you didn't have before. This approach will also help you to migrate your world, your entire environment, to another platform, be it data center, another cloud provider, another, going from OpenStack to Kubernetes, whatever. Any kind of large-scale architecture migration will be much more safe and, stressless if you have on-demand environments where you can play around and test out things before you bring it into production. So, and don't forget, dream job. That's it. Thanks a lot for today. We have a few moments for some questions. Happy if I can help you. We are a small consultancy focusing on IT strategy, compliance automation, business continuity, obviously, in general, fixing projects that are going bad. I love all things IT. I'm not limited to just, development or production or desktops. I do everything because I think IT is a very, very integrated field, and the main job is making customers and users and engineers happy and create meaningful work environments where we can all strive. Thank you very much.